Well, good evening and welcome to the 12th edition of the About Small Business podcast. On this week's edition, I'm going to be talking to Ashley Bell from FX Productions. This is an area of personal interest to me. I'm really looking forward to listening to what Ashley's got to say. As ever, if you're enjoying what we do with this podcast, please like the channel, subscribe to the channel, and click that little bell thing so that you get notifications as to when we've got a new episode out. Ashley, brilliant to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yes, Barry.
So, Ash, FX Productions, it sounds amazing. Can you perhaps just give everyone an overview of what it is you guys actually do?
We're an event supplier, I would say. We supply lighting, audio, staging, video walls, scenery, effects, anything to do with the events industry, whether that be for a gig, for a theatre show, for a concert, a tour, down to conferences, back room of a pub, to arenas, you name it.
You can supply it.
We can supply it.
That's brilliant stuff. So, we're actually in the hub of everything, your main office.
HQ.
So, I know obviously we have worked together before.
Yes.
Where do you store all the stuff in a warehouse?
Yep, just through the back there.
Just through the back.
Backstage, as we call it.
And I've seen some of the rigs that you work with as well.
Yeah.
So do you have to do a lot of outsourcing with that?
No, sometimes yes. No, the industry that we work in, nobody has all the equipment they need all the time.
Yeah.
It's physically impossible, and nobody's pockets are deep enough to do it. Plain and simply. So there is occasions where you need to get stuff in. There might be something that comes in where you've got multiple jobs on the same weekend or weekday for that matter, and you've got to make sure that everything's covered. So
using those contacts and making sure that whatever the event, the sound, the lighting, everything runs smoothly.
Exactly.
And on that note, I'm going to say if there are any issues with the sound or lighting for this podcast, I'll be honest. I was going to blame Ash, but I can't. He's got nothing to do with this. This is any mistakes are mine and mine alone. Ashley will give you a very, very professional service, and I've used him firsthand, so I can attend to that. So in terms of where you started out, Ash, let's go back as far as school if we can.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy school?
Yeah, I suppose I did. Yeah. I enjoyed school. I didn't enjoy college. I really didn't.
Were you getting involved in school productions?
Yeah. School productions, band at school. That was what I was doing, and I joined an amateur theatre group at the same time. People all roughly my age, sort of thing.
So are you fundamentally a performer then?
No. No, this is the next bit of the story. When I was at school, I was doing all the shows and that, and messing on with PA systems and music lessons and things like that. And I would go and I would rehearse and I would do the shows. But I make myself sound ancient here. But back then, health and safety wasn't as stringent as it should be now.
Yeah.
And as a 14, 15-year-old kid, you were helping to set the show up. You were getting involved. You were building the bits of the scenery. You were hanging the cloths. You were sorting the lights out. You were sorting the sound out. And it didn't take as long to realise that I was enjoying that more than I was enjoying the actual performance side of it. Right. It was like, oh, great, we're doing the get-in for the show next week. And it's brilliant, fantastic, this is great. And then it's, we're doing the show. Right, okay, fine. But then we get to take it all out again. We get to do this. And and that's how it kind of started. And then from there, I went and did me work experience, believe it or not. That 2 weeks of work experience as it was back then.
Around about year 10 or something like that.
Yeah, it was year 11 for me.
Oh, right.
I don't know why, but it was. And I did it at Stanley Civic Hall, which was the theatre.
Oh, okay.
And with the technician at the time, Dean, who I'm still great friends with. And had a great 2 weeks, probably the best 2 weeks of my life. Didn't want to go back to school. Enjoyed it. My music teacher at the time was brilliant, and got involved more in the technical side of things, and that led us to go on to Newcastle College to do music technology and music production,
right.
which I enjoyed, yes. I mean, I was probably a bit harsh when I said I didn't enjoy college. But at the same time, I was working I then got a job at Stanley Civic Hall.
Right, so you're doing it for real.
Yeah, and I was working with a local PA company, and in a way, I felt like I was learning more. Well, it wasn't that I was learning more. It was more hands-on even than what college was. College was very hands-on. You were in recording studios, you were in live environment and things like that. But I felt like I was learning real world a lot more away from college, and that's where I was there for 4 years, and then I think me fourth year I really struggled. The first couple of years was all right, but I really struggled. But I got through there. Got the end.
Can I ask you about the course a little bit? Because I mean, certainly music technology. I mean, I started dabbling in music technology from all like sort of crack copies of Cubase that everyone was doing. I've got a few years on you, so when you're complaining about your age, then feel for me. I do recall getting involved in like sort of the internet was kind of in its infancy, and like sort of the little sort of user groups and people were very, very cynical of those courses. Yeah, I believe now as well. I mean, even arts courses are kind of in the firing line to some degree. I do know a couple of other people who did music technology degrees. One of whom is making part of his living as a performer.
Right.
The other chap, I think, is unfortunately, I think probably more common and doing absolutely nothing to do with his degree. Now, you have successfully formed your own company. I don't think you can argue with that, and are actually using. I mean, what's your opinion on those kind of courses? Just given that you have made a success of it, but I'm just interested because of what you said.
I think they're brilliant. I kind of take my lecturers were fantastic. Yeah. They couldn't have done more. The selection of what we had was brilliant, and we're going back more than 20 years ago now. It was a brilliant time. I think it's a good access to the industry, shall we say. Right. Some of the contacts that you built from that were phenomenal. It certainly was when I was there.
I think that's a common thread through this podcast. That a lot of people are talking about the contacts that you make. Yeah, and that's obviously key to doing well as a business. So perhaps most degrees is where it becomes useful. You're mixing with different people, networking, and perhaps that side of things is arguably more important than what you learn in itself. Even to a point. I
think also as well
do you notice how I avoided saying to a degree?
I think what also, which isn't on the curriculum at all on any course, but I think it's more prevalent in what I did, especially. It taught you about life in the industry, so to speak. Yes. It taught you how to go on with people in the industry. Everybody talks about you go to college or university and you get that life experience, you grow up, but you grew up in an environment of peers. Yeah. And I think that was what was important. And it was brilliant, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And there was the point in my fourth year where I was thinking, I just want to go and work now. I just want to go and...
I say 4 years is quite a long time.
I just want to go on and get on with it. And it's like parents and people, no, just stick it out at the end, stick it out. And I'm pleased I did. I really am pleased I did. Yeah. And I wouldn't change it for the world. But
right. So, I mean, in terms, if someone was looking to get into this industry, would you advise them?
Yeah. I definitely would. My biggest thing that I've always said from day one, and I'm not being disrespectful here, but Stanley Civic Hall, unfortunately, it breaks me heart to say it how it is now when it's been closed, but I started at Stanley Civic Hall and we did shows there that realistically shouldn't have been done there. They were far too big for the venue, and a lot of things didn't work, but we had to make it work. And that is what stood me in great standing for where I am today. Every curveball that could be imagined was just thrown at you. That's not working. Oh, you need to make this work. It's all gone crazy. But there's a lot better course. Well, I wouldn't say better course. There's a lot more zoned in courses now to do what I do, as opposed to what there was back then. There wasn't a specific course for event production, shall we say there, but there is now. I know Newcastle College do it, or at least I think they do. And my only thing with the courses is, all well and good, great, but everything works all of the time. Everything's brand new. Everything's brilliant. And then when people leave the course and go into the real world, and it's like, that isn't working. Oh, I don't know what to do. And that's the only thing that I would say is what I would change. Slightly more problem solving.
Give them knackered equipment.
Yeah. Top and bottom of it.
Set a course up on a budget.
Yeah, it's. I always say that's what stood me in good stead, and that's
so basically problems, and again, something that's coming through with a lot of people that I'm interviewing for this podcast. It's that ability to problem solve. Things rarely go according. I mean, even as you've witnessed my fumbling around and setting stuff up, I'm still looking at this camera here and thinking that's slightly overexposed. I'll try and sort it in post-production, but it is the amount I've learnt just through doing this podcast, setting things up, and I suppose at college it's like something goes wrong, you've got something to run along. That's not going to happen. It's
that life experience, and there's a lot of people come out of college and everything works to the book, and it's all great until it doesn't.
I think that's a big thing with like sort of also employed versus self-employed as well. It's like if something doesn't work, you're not getting paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing quite so motivating as starving. But I mean, just to go back to the course idea, because I mean, you've got your traditional educational route, but as we know, there's so much information available on YouTube at the minute. Is that something that do you have an opinion on that in terms of like if someone's sort of a little bit younger, they're considering what they want to do, they're like yourself, they're enjoying that side of things at school, they're thinking, right, do I go to college? Do I get stuck into YouTube? Find work experience?
I would say in this day and age you could potentially start with some YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
But get an apprenticeship, get involved in a company, get just working, even if it's working in a pub doing the sound, 2 microphones for a band, just or wherever that may be,
or
just
a podcast.
Get involved somewhere somehow and grow from there. It's a weird business to be in. It's a strange business, and it's not for everybody.
In what way?
I would personally say it's a lifestyle choice as well as a business.
I was thinking that as I asked that. Look, let's take a step back. What does, I suppose the first thing that I was going to say, what does a typical day look like? But I suppose your answer to that is there's not a typical day.
There isn't a typical day, and that's one of the things I absolutely love about my job.
Yeah.
Because no 2 days are the same. And that's brilliant. I couldn't think of anything worse than personally sitting at a desk inputting numbers into a spreadsheet 9 till 5 every day. I would not for me at all. But I think you've got to love it to do it. The hours are ridiculously unsocial. You'll know yourself with the buskers.
So everyone else is posting on Facebook, oh yeah, it's the weekend, and my pet, it's wine o'clock, shut up. and then you say, oh, weekend's here, it's Friday, hey, it's like
bank holiday weekends, yay. Another extra day of being able to work. But it's horrendously unsocial. It can take you away from friends and family for days, weeks, which is hard. It's really hard.
I would say, because obviously you have got a young family.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that?
It's hard at times. It's really, really, really hard at times. I'm eternally grateful for FaceTime. Eternally grateful. I try to minimise what I'm away as much as I can. I'll come back when I can, and be in touch as much as I can when I can. But I know that's making it sound like I'm away all the time, and I'm not. But I can be working 5 minutes away from my house as I am now, and still not be home for. I go home, but I go home to sleep, and then I get up and I go back to work again.
As the hours dictate.
It's
that kind of
and I can still kind of be away from the family with being at home, and that's a bizarre thing to say, but that's the reality of it.
It's and I suppose a downside, if there is one, but it's like I say, a lifestyle choice, but it doesn't make that any easier, I suppose.
No, it doesn't. Like I say, you've got to love it to do it, and I'm yet to find somebody who deep down somewhere doesn't love what they do. Everybody has the bad days out there. Everybody, I can't be bothered to get out of work today. I can't be bothered to go and do all this. But at the end of the day, the good outweighs the bad by far.
Yeah, there's a passion there that's driving you.
Yeah,
and so basically we've gone from school, which you did enjoy.
Yeah.
You're getting involved with school productions. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. You've then, I suppose, got a little bit of a hybrid route because you're in work experience and you're at college.
Yeah.
And you were wanting very much to get the longer things went on over the 4 years you were there.
Yeah.
Over that 4 year period, you're leaning very much more towards actually doing things, which is, and I think as most people would understand, that's where you're really learning.
Yeah.
End of the course. What then? Did you go full time into working?
I was still working for it was Derwentide District Council then, believe it or not, up at the theatre and doing bits and bobs for PA companies and things like that. But at the same time, over college times, I was picking up bits of gear, and I kind of guess in a way, FX Productions began in them 4 years that I was there. That definitely say that. But then, obviously, it wasn't making any real money back then. Not long after I left college, I was fortunate enough to get a job as technical manager at Derwentide District Council. So I looked after Stanley Civic Hall, Concert Empire, and other things that they had going on. And I was there for a good number of years. But whilst I was doing that, I was also building this up.
Right. So I think what now the trendy name for it is a side hustle.
Yeah.
So you start. So you got your job and you've got your side hustle.
Yeah.
Which and then presumably that side hustle then
overtook the job basically, and I left. I think it was over 10, maybe 10, 12 years ago. I can't remember, to be honest with you. And this has been me since.
Is that position, your job, is that still there or?
Hard one that. In that I left Derwentide District Council, moved to a company called Leisureworks that oversaw the theatres. I handed my notice in and was 2 days away from walking away from the organisation to go and do my own thing, and I got asked as a company to supply the technicians for the venues, which was great. We did that for a number of years, and then things changed within the organisation. Stanley Civic Hall went to Stanley Town Council. They didn't really do a massive amount of theatre stuff, and Concert Empire went to Durham County Council, and they took over, and our contract was with Leisureworks, so that was the natural end of that. But it's been a catalyst really to what we are today.
So how long roughly were you employed for then? Before? Bear in mind, people that are good at maths watching this will be able to work out your age.
No, it's all right. I've just had my 40th birthday.
Youngster.
About 10, 12 years, I would say. I was employed.
What were the main lessons that you took from that spell of your life? Which bits do you think were the most helpful to you now, shall we say?
I would say the management side of things. You were learning all of a sudden that you had to put together a team of staff.
Right.
You had to deal with upper management. You had to deal with the companies that were coming in, risk assessments, all of these things and now I just see it as a day-to-day thing. That's what I do. This is the norm. But back then it was like, oh, this is new. I've got to learn this, right? Okay, fair enough. How to deal with people. It was a building block. It really was, and grateful for it.
The other thing I was going to ask you, because I mean, you'd mentioned earlier, like sort of about numbers, and you the idea of like sort of sat at a computer and putting numbers. Would it be reasonable to assume from that you're not a numbers person?
I don't mind it, to be fair. I don't.
That's the next question was obviously because I mean certainly you need to be on top of your numbers for your business.
Yeah.
And have you had any? Because I mean, for me, it's like I find that a real chore. Sort of VAT returns at the end. Oh God!
Yeah.
So now it's like making tax digitals. Oh God! Yeah. And all the sort of free services that were, when they started making tax digitals, they're now charging you. Which I mean, you can't begrudge people making money if they've got to provide a service. Yeah. But I just remember you used to go to like sort of HMRC and just put the numbers in their website, and it was all done and dusted. But I do find that side of things. It's well, I've got an accountant who does the important bits. I input my numbers and things. So I mean, you don't have any real issue with that. That's just
sadly, I quite enjoy doing it. I quite enjoy doing the admin. The time that I don't enjoy doing the admin is when I'm having to squeeze it in amongst events and things like that. That's when it becomes, all right, I'm sat here at 11 o'clock at night in the house.
I was going to say, it's a really different mindset, isn't it, when you've got to sort of go do something quite sort of constructive, quite creative, and then all of a sudden you've got to go into numbers mode. It's just I mean, I personally find that really quite hard.
Yeah.
If it's a numbers, I like to have a numbers day, sit down, so right, okay, numbers. I'm not really going to enjoy this as best I can, but I'll procrastinate for a bit, make a cup of tea, maybe sort of just check emails. But I'll get into it, and that's that day. I mean, what you're suggesting there, I find that really hard.
Yeah, I love it when I can either sit here or sit at home and I can put Sky Sports on, and because that's and I just sit and do it, and that's great. That's no problem. But when you shoehorn it in, picking an hour up here and an hour, it becomes a bit of a right. Okay, fair enough. Get all that back out again. Right, come on. Right, got to get this done tonight. Got to get this at least up to here, and that's when it becomes a bit of a sick of this now.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So with the positions, your time at Domicile Council's come to an end. Working for yourself then, it sounds from what you're saying as that was kind of a natural evolution. Was there any sort of a day where it's like, right, this decision now needs to be made, or did it just kind of, it sounds like it sort of seamlessly happened almost.
It kind of did. I always wanted, I think from a young age, I always wanted to work for myself. That was the end goal. And I always remember there was a guy, a very good friend of mine, Steve, who told us when I got the job, he was a predecessor of mine in the role. He says, well proud, great, well chuffed for you. One piece of advice, you'll know when it's time to go.
Yeah. And
I went, all right, okay, no problem. And I did. It stuck with us. And I went on my own, basically. But
did it feel like a brave decision?
Did at the time. I pondered it for a long time, and it was that scariness of, I know at the end of the month, I've currently been employed, I know I'm going to have X amount of pounds in the bank, I can afford to pay for this, and this, and great, sorted. Going out on my own, it's like, oh, okay, right. There is no guarantees.
No, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because you sort of stop thinking in monthly increments, don't you? And it's like, right, okay, well, what if there's nothing comes in that month? And I suppose to a degree for anyone else, that's always a big issue. You know, and I've spoken to people who needed, you know, 27 grand income before that was their break-even point.
Yeah.
And it is very much a different mindset, because you do have to think, right, okay, well, it's not about what comes in every month, and everyone else is all right. Oh, got to the end of the month, and it's like, depending on the month, it's like, well, I don't care about that. Oh, God, so looking forward to the next month after that.
Yeah.
And is it reasonable to say for yourself you're quite seasonal?
Yeah, I mean, it can be seasonal, but it can be seasonal within a week. it can literally be crazy at one end of the week and quiet at the other end of the week. I'm fortunate in what I do, in that we tick a lot of boxes for various different events, and it's another thing that I like about what I do. I can do rock and roll, I can do the festivals, I can do that, but I can also do theatre. And Christmas time, when rock and roll's quite quiet, it's pantos there. It's great, and I love the diversity of what we do, and I love that we can continue to work throughout the year as well, obviously for obvious reasons.
Are there any favourites?
No, I wouldn't say so. I always, it's that bizarre thing. You'll be in the midst of panto, and it's like, I cannot wait for a rock and roll gig. I just want to go and chuck some microphones at a drum kit and throw some lights on and make like a loud gig and enjoy it. But then you'll be in the middle of doing all of that for a few weeks, and then it's like, I can't wait to be back in the theatre. I just want to be warm. It's horses for courses. It's nice to keep it mixed up.
So you mentioned earlier on before when we were setting up, and you'd mentioned about just the freelance nature of the industry as well. Yeah. Can you just explain a little bit about that in terms of like the kind of people that you work with? Your phone comes up, you've got problems, or what sort of people are in your contact book? You go to people.
Yeah,
when you might need a bit of help.
We're based on freelancers for everything we do, and I've got a contact book of various different people, and obviously we get different jobs in. 1 minute we might be working on lighting on one thing, video on another, sound on another, and there's different people who have different area of expertise. There's some that are great at it all. There's some that they're a lighting person, they're a video person, they're a staging person, and it's being able to have the flexibility to go to the various different and not be tied down's the wrong word. But to be able to go to the best people for a specific job. Yeah. And that's brilliant. It does come with its problems at time, and especially since COVID, it has caused a lot, because a lot of people left the industry because of how bad things got, really, I suppose, through COVID, and didn't come back on foot, and we lost such a great group of people, especially in the Northeast. And now freelancers aren't as available, shall we say, because everybody's busy, everybody's doing their thing, and sometimes it is a bit of a bit back to the numbers thing, ringing people, can you do this one, can you do, and that's when it becomes a chew again. But yeah, they're a great bunch of people. And back to the loving the job thing, you've got to get on well and like the people you work with as well, because I see some of these guys more than I see my family, sharing hotel rooms with them and being stuck in a van in confined spaces with them for hours and hours and hours on end. If you didn't get on with the people you work with, it would be hell on earth. It would be absolutely... Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's times where we all get on each other's nerves, but there's times where we have such a good laugh as well. That's... Yeah,
sort of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And I suppose that symbiosis, you need each other.
Yeah. Totally.
To get that sort of team together.
Totally.
Because I think, as you mentioned earlier, unless someone's going to have that absolute fortune, because each area that you're working with, really, like, so where it's sound, lighting, video, each of these areas, the equipment's so expensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then for someone to pull it all together as well, which I think is something the public at large don't necessarily appreciate fully.
No, it's a very much stand in the dark, staying out of the way job. I always say if we go unnoticed, we've done our job right. That's the way it kind of goes. It's very rare for the general public, shall we say, to come to a gig or a show and go, oh, the lighting was amazing, the sound was amazing, it was brilliant. It just doesn't happen.
It's an overall experience, I suppose. You go, I mean, in the case of a band, the rock and roll that you mentioned, you go, you watch that band, the crowd are enjoying it, they're really into it, or depending on the band. And similarly for your pantos and things like that, you've got your production which either works or it doesn't. But I suppose it is a really tough job, because if you think about the lighting going wrong, the sound going wrong, it really can derail the performance.
Completely. The wheels can come off in seconds if it all goes wrong.
So you've got, in some ways, you've got that risk of everything going wrong, but you don't really get a huge amount of credit if it goes right. It's like
I'm fortunate with the people I work with, and the artists and the actors, and they're very appreciative. But yeah, it's definitely that thing of it just happens in the darkness, and unless the wheels come off.
You're not there for the adulation and the praise.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, this is absolutely bizarre for me, being sat at this end of a microphone instead of behind a load of faders.
Although, to be fair, I have heard you sing.
And you are a very good singer. I wouldn't say that. I think that was the tequila rosé talking.
But there we go. So karaoke.
There's a story for another day.
Indeed. For anyone that is wondering, we played at Ash's wedding. He did get up and sang a Sweet Caroline, was it? Neil Diamond, and did a thoroughly good job of it. So credit to you. But no. So I mean, in terms of the people that you're working with, can you perhaps tell us a couple of the acts that people might be familiar with of people that you would work with?
We're currently on tour with Joe McElderry, who won the X Factor 14 years ago, I think it was. Providing lighting and video for his latest tour, which pans out throughout the year, culminating in a one-off Christmas special at the City Hall in November. Right. Which is fun. Great, have a great laugh with it, with the whole tour. Great bunch of people to work with. Other people we work with, we supply everything for Storming the Castle up at Whitton Castle every year, and have done for a lot of years now. I just found out that Phil Campbell out of Motorhead's headlining this year again, so that'd be good.
That's interesting, because I was under the impression for that it was all sort of very much local bands.
No. For a lot of years now, I think this will be my 21st year there, coming up, and as far back as I can remember, they've had a named headliner every year. We had Ty Wilcox last year. Who else? The Levellers, the Stranglers, UFO.
Do you know what, you mentioned these bands now, and I'm thinking back to my old vinyl collection. It's dear me. I think I had something from pretty much all of them. And so Phil Campbell's on this year. My main memory of Motorhead, funnily enough, not everyone will have realised this. I'm interested to know if can you remember the Young Ones? Yeah. Do you remember Motorhead appeared on the Young Ones?
No.
Right. I was going to give you a quick test then, because there's a scene where they did obviously the Young Ones had Motorhead set up in their living room, right, and just issues with video going wrong in this instance. It came onto the guitar solo, and obviously they had two guitarists with Motorhead, and the camera zoomed in. There's two parts for this guitar solo. The camera zooms in on each guitarist of their solo, but they got the one playing rhythm. But they got the wrong one, and it's it's one of these things that as a musician you get a bit. I notice. I wonder how many other people, but you didn't watch it, so I can't.
Spinal Tap moment.
No, you didn't watch it, so I can't. I couldn't test you that. So a bit of a fear. Maybe edit that out. There we go. But we've gone from school. It's a really quite an interesting journey. You've gone from school, kind of almost knowing what you wanted to do, almost knowing that you loved this, and you got that passion. You've managed to find a dream job in many ways.
Yeah, totally.
That came to a sort of natural conclusion, and left you, as a very successful company in the Northeast, looking after a lot of the events that are going on in this area. Over that period of time, because it's not that long. You're younger than me, but what would you say was? Have you had any low points? Because it's
you have the day-to-day lows, which is a bit like that was a tough gig or whatever. But nothing that's lasted, if that makes sense. The only thing that really hit me personally hard was COVID, the pandemic. I'm certainly not belittling what anybody else went through, and there's a lot of people had it a damn sight worse than what I did. But it was possibly the hardest period of my life, work-wise.
How did you cope with that?
I didn't really. It would. I look, like we've discussed. I love what I do. I'm lucky to class my hobby as a job and a career at that. And to be told overnight you can't do that. There is no way you can do that, and there's no end in sight of when you will be able to do that again. Was soul destroying, and there was a lot of time fairly early on in the first lockdown where I didn't even come here. I couldn't even bear to look at it. I couldn't, because I didn't know whether that was it. That was going to be, as a lot of people, we didn't know what the world was going to be like ever again. And
uncertainty certainly killed.
And regardless whether I survived, like financially survived and kept the business afloat, is there going to be the venues open at the end of it? Is the artists going to be still going? All of these things were coming into play, and it was, what can I do? What I've invested all of this money in the equipment, and this is all I've ever done. This has been my job, and there was a long period of time where I just didn't look at it and couldn't look at it because it hurt in a way. I guess.
I can. I mean, for my main job with the punctuation show, I was exactly the same. It was just basically you left kind of high and dry. Financially, we were okay. Like I say, my wife, she was head teacher. She was going in still on her full pay. We'd got obviously some savings as well, but which and other investments that looked after us. But it's just, I think it's more than just the finance, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just that's your reason for getting out of bed in the morning.
Yeah,
all of a sudden, someone's saying, "No, you can't do that anymore."
Yeah,
and it's. I think it's very. I think people who have a job, who are perhaps doing something that they're not quite so passionate about, and don't get me wrong, who the country absolutely need. We can't operate if everyone goes self-employed. But it's something that I don't think you really do understand unless you are sort of living that.
Totally. It was a bizarre situation to be put in. I've never filled out as much paperwork just to keep the lights on in here. It was crazy.
How long did it take you to bounce back from that?
When restrictions lifted, we were fairly quick back to work, although it was a bit weird at first because everything was socially...
Just what you saying about the venues and things like that.
Yeah, we were fortunate to do some gigs fairly early on that, like socially distanced events and stuff like that were in a way fun to do.
Yeah.
And
I know certainly a lot of pubs were trying to like sort of just get things going in their beer gardens.
Yeah.
Just to...
Thankfully, a lot of the people that I work with got through it all right, and they were very eager to get back going again. And so were a lot of the venues that I worked in as well. And it picked up fairly quickly, but financially, probably took a good amount of time to get back to where it was. And there's still that, well, if COVID hadn't happened, I could have been here by now or whatever.
You can't help but think like that sometimes.
Yeah.
So you've got to try and stay positive, but there's always that.
Yeah, but that, I would say, is the biggest low I've had in all the time I've been doing this. And bizarrely, not through my own making, which is weird. I suppose a bit of a control freak. Everything else,
I think we all are, though, aren't we?
Yeah.
If we're doing this, if we're doing what we love,
I think if you are self-employed, you are a bit. It's a strange scenario in that everything else I can control, and if something's not right, I can go and put it right.
Yeah.
Whereas that was, no, you've just got to stay in the house.
Yeah.
And it's like, right, okay.
And then some of your customers are going to go under, some of your clients, colleagues are going to go under, you won't be there anymore, you don't know what's going on. It certainly was a tough time. On the more positive side of things, what would you say was I suppose a career high, sort of one of the best things that sticks out for you?
There's loads of little ones. There's gigs that you do that are special and will always be special because you saw that firsthand, or you were there when that happened, and you had a laugh at this point or whatever, or you played an iconic venue that you've always wanted to, and things like that. But then there's other little things like businessy side of things that for me are highs, like I managed to get that myself. That was good. Do you know what I mean? Like 10 years ago, I was dreaming, wishing I could have that. Now I've got it.
Yeah.
It's.
Are we talking gigs or client?
Both. Clients,
or gear,
equipment, premises. I started out in a room not much bigger than this.
Yeah.
It was an old hairdresser's, and literally everything I had fit in this little box. Now we've got a 4,500 square foot warehouse. To sit back and think about it at times, it's
incredible, isn't it?
It's like, right, okay, it's great. That's a career high for me.
Yeah.
But then you do the gigs and you meet some amazing people on crews as well as artists, and some amazing characters that the rest of the world a lot of time doesn't see.
Can I just ask you, just with mentioning gear, I do know certainly anyone that's into audio, video, whatever it is, we're all an absolute nightmare for buying gear and wanting a new microphone, and like sort of partners, wives, husbands, whatever, whoever it is, they never quite get it. It's like, what you want this, and it does what? When it's absolutely your living, which it is for you, because you're kind of in. I mean, whilst you're hiring out your expertise, people are also coming to you for this gear.
Mm-hmm.
How do you? And I'm asking you this as a kind of almost therapy for myself. How do you actually know? At what point do you say, I don't need that, and I do need that?
I suppose as I've approached it in a different way the older I get, in that I now look at things as to where have I been spending money on hires, to hire in equipment, what will make the money back the quickest, essentially. You've got to look at it as a business.
So what's going to be an investment rather
exactly
than
that. Not just, that looks pretty, that looks great. I could get some of that. But you've got to look at it structured as to how you would want to make the money back on it, basically. For example, we've invested in video wall as opposed to renting in some of the time. We've invested in PA systems. We've invested in all sorts of different departments. But instead of bringing equipment in over the years, we've built it up ourselves. And that's the idea.
Are you then now in a position where you would hire that out to another company as well?
Yeah.
So you've got that, and it can make sense. Yeah. So basically, the answer to that is, as long as it's I'll not lie, it's not the answer I was looking for, but
a lot of the time, because you get the glossy mags with it all in, and then you go to the trade shows, and it's that's great. That how can I work that in?
A certain type of you will get that. Others will be like, "What a pair of weirdos!"
Yeah. Oh, it's a complete geek fest.
So I mean, we've got a lovely story there of what's essentially a young lad that's realised his dream. What's the future look like for you? And FX Productions. What next?
I don't know, to be honest, and that's what I quite like about it. Keep doing what I'm doing, and as long as I'm happy and making money, I'm all right, I guess.
Doing what you love.
Doing what I love, yeah. Obviously want to grow, get bigger, but not in the belly. that needs to come down a bit.
You can't do this job in small. I mean,
no, I've tried that excuse. It doesn't work all the time. But yeah, I like to go to work, and every day is a school day. That's a big thing, and I like, even if it's just the tiniest little thing, I learned that a day. That's important. Or even doing that in a different way made that easier or whatever. And I suppose as long as that's doing that, and my life's panning out like that, I'm happy.
Living your dream, I think that's the crucial thing. That's a fantastic story. Ash, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed talking, like sort of sharing some of those passions, gear acquisition, getting out, doing live gigs and stuff like that. I really enjoyed.
I'll give you a list of things you need to buy.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to the wife. Ash, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.